Hello everyone. We are from Group 4. We are going to be presenting on persona and subject. So in today's presentation, we will be including the introduction of persona, and then the importance of using persona, and then moving on to the next chapter is the related terms, and then lastly we will be including the example in poetry. So I'll be passing to the next presenter.
According to Baldwin 2020, the word persona comes from the Latin meaning the mask of an actor. It is usually connected to dramatic work performed on stage and the character is engaging with. The word is also tied to the phrase dramatic personae, which is the list of characters at the beginning of a play. The plural form for persona is person, which is also a kind of fictional presentation such as novel or a play. Another definition of persona is the voice that talks to the reader in poetry in the forms of literature. It is important for the readers to understand that in most cases, the persona is not always the author of the poetry or any literary work. Hence, the persona is a creative invention of the writer which serves as their mouthpieces of ideas and feeling. A persona also gives an author a way to explore another character's thoughts and feeling as if the author were really that person. So through the use of persona, the writer are able to interpret the experiences of characters who are not necessarily themselves. Next, the word persona is very similar to the other concepts such as alter ego, stage name, and pen name, but there are still obvious differences between each. Persona is a speaker in any literary work, whereas a stage name and a pen name are simply different names that artists use to either disguise their identity or give themselves a more exciting or memorable way for people to remember them. For example, stage names are named by Madonna, Lady Gaga, and Marilyn Monroe. For example, used for pen names by popular authors Mark Twain, J.K. Rowling, and Robert Galbraith, and also George Eliot. Last but not least, for alter ego, it is believed to be a second self existing in the same body. Although alter ego is very similar to persona, but it represents the real thoughts and emotions of the author, while in contrast, the persona represents the thoughts and emotions of another character that is not the author.
Now let's move on to the importance of persona. So why should a literary composition such as poem have persona? When we read something, surely we will find the meaning behind it. So the idea of persona in literature is to understand the ideas and story of the poem that the author tried to relay. With a persona included, the reader will be able to understand the story better. Thus, the reader's perspective and the interpretation of the composition will broaden. As poem is a literary composition that one can express their emotion, the author used persona to enhance their ideas, beliefs, and voices they are not able to express freely. Using persona, the author can create a character that suits their emotion and feelings, where the author can adopt the voice of himself, another person, animal, or even an object. They can adopt the point of view of someone else. Let's see why persona is important. This poem is by Willis Hall, and the title of this poem is My Hero. The author creates another character, which is a young boy, where the monologue in the poem can be in the perspective of either his younger self or some young boy talks on his father. From this, we can see that the idea of this poem is about the opinions of a boy toward his father by the existence of a boy character in the monologue.
Okay, let's talk about the related term in persona and subject. The first one is tone. Tone is the attitude towards the subject expressed in a work, and tone usually is understood as the author's attitude but need not to be identified with the author. And the second one is the voice persona. So voice persona is the verbal personality of a first-person narrator When including the first-person narrator, the author is presenting their story from someone else's perspective. This is particularly obvious when an author writes from the child's point of view. Like, for example, To Kill a Mockingbird, it is narrated by 6-year-old Scout, and another example is the persona of a duke in the poem My Last Duchess. An author uses a persona to give a book an uniform perspective that is not the author's own point of view, but rather the perspective of someone inside the story and close to the story's actions and emotion. Now let's dive into the tone in poetry. In poetry, the tone functions by paying close attention to the poem's details and word choice. The reader can get a better understanding of the poet's attitude. For example, in the 2 couplets from the poem Polar Street by Chen Chen, you see that the words like "oh" and "sorry" reveals the speaker's immediate disquietude, especially since he describes himself as taken aback. So the speaker's tone could be described as both meek and searching. The next one is the point of view. So there are 3 points of view: first person I, second person you, third person he or she. Whichever point of view you use, the narrator has a persona, but since the third person point of view, the narrator is supposed to be the author. Usually we only talk about persona for the first person narratives, but even a third person narrator can have a persona which is not that of the true author, so it's not that limited. However, first person tends to be more intimate, while the third person may hold the reader at arm's length. For example, in Soaked, wrote by Lauren Broaddus, you see from the poem, it uses the first person plural our. You may also use another first person plural like we, us, etc. So in the poem, the first person plural our is to help the reader imagine being part of the poet's childhood friend group. So Soaked allows readers to imagine joining the boys on the baseball field in the dewy morning, evoking a sense of nostalgia.
Hi, so I'll be presenting on the example of persona. There are many different persona can be seen throughout literature, and it is up to the author's creativity to select or choose different personas that was best to use in given situation. As an example, in the poem The Living Photograph by Jackie Kay, the author used the first person view of herself looking at an old photograph of her grandmother while describing the features of her grandmother that can be seen in the photograph. The usage of persona in this poem has provided us with first person view of the subject, and it has given us an insight into what was in the author's mind or her imagination, and we can relate to this poem as better as we are able to read it in first person perspective. Another great example was the poem The Poison Tree by William Blake, which the persona is in first person, but it still could be referred to anyone who had bad experiences with anger management and nursed their anger until it ate into their own life. This poem utilized the same method, but on a broader scale where it does not limit the point of view towards a specific speaker, but more openly, so the readers can easily relate with the theme of the poem. By creating a persona, it would help the writer to reach more possibilities than they could have ever imagined. The usage of persona further helps improve the reader understanding by providing various perspectives to describe feelings, emotion, dilemmas, and more. By using persona, the explanation for such abstract concept can be a bit easier for the author, and the reader can take notes of the description to further enhance their comprehension of the text. Through the usage of persona, the writer could find another way to put across views or opinions that they have to another character. The creation of persona has helped them to cross any sorts of boundaries that they face in expressing their thoughts as themselves. The usage of persona also helps the author to control the image that they present to the outside world. It is a powerful tool that could help in crafting messages or delivering point across, and it is also an efficient tool to connect with the audience. It is also a great way to add more creative flair to your writing, and it has been a popular method that being used throughout all over the world.